Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Healing Home. I'm your host, Michelle, and today I am joined by an herbal colleague of mine, Amanda Furbee of the Herb Shoppe in Portland, Oregon. Now, Amanda and I haven't spoken in a while, but she is a woman that I've always looked up to, I've always respected because she was part of my beginnings as an herbalist. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in our interview. But before we really get into it, I want to just remind everybody that for all things Healing Home, you can head to michelleshealinghome.com, and there you'll be able to find my blog. You can find my online store, more information about me, and the podcast, The Healing Home. But a little bit more about Amanda. Amanda is an herbalist, a savvy businesswoman, and the owner of the Herb Shoppe in Portland, Oregon. She is also in charge of the Herb Shoppe's nonprofit herbal clinic. She, along with other herbal practitioners, offer affordable in-person and virtual herbal consultations to the community and, quote, mutual aid to help empower people and long-term support for recovery. Now, I met Amanda back in around 2013 while I was working as an intern at the Herb Shoppe. She wasn't the owner of the shop at the time, but was the manager, and JJ Purcell was the owner. Amanda took me under her wing, so to say, and helped me gain confidence as an intern. And then she took on the responsibility to open a second location, which she still owns today. And she asked me to become an employee and a part of that new location opening. And that to me was like seriously such an honor and such a boost to my confidence as an herbalist at the time, because it really allowed me to see that herbalism has so many avenues that you can take. And so before I get more into that story, I'm going to go ahead and bring Amanda into the stream so we can talk about it together.
Well, it's great to
Hi.
see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. How are you?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. Enjoying the nice spring weather that's coming our way.
Yes, me too. Oh my goodness. And it's actually kind of cold in the gorge today, but the sun has been super glorious. So,
Yeah, it look like you have a nice glow going.
oh yeah, I've been in the sun a lot lately, so it's feeling good. Nice. So I want to give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself, even though I did that, but I want you to have the floor to do that. And if there's anything specific that you want to shout out before we get started and get into the interview a little more deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So I dove into herbal medicine, moved over here from the East Coast. I was doing design work and really got the calling to get into herbal medicine, which I know that part of that story, and it was just such a force of nature that drove me into herbal medicine and into the herb shop and working with the community. Of course, I started as an intern at the herb shop and then also like a part-time employee, and instantly saw the magic of what the herb shop and what all herb shops hold, really, and creating a safe space for the community and watching folks like yourself come in. And I was so green then still. I mean, I'd only been there a few years and into herbalism when you got there. But I love seeing that light bulb moment with people that really love herbal medicine and want it to be part of their life and part of their journey. And I think so much of that is, what the herb shop is, and, now the nonprofit, and being able to create, a larger community for folks that, maybe can't afford to have a full consultation or to pay for products. So that nonprofit really creates that whole, I feel like, that is an herbal in the herbal community to help anybody and everybody, because I do believe that plant medicine is there for all of us, and it's something that we all should have access to at all times.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. And, I have such fond memories of being really green myself and working with you and having this feeling of there was like a safety feeling with you. Like I felt like you were very open and compassionate to lots of people and myself included, and being a person that really knew basically nothing about plants, but had this calling once I went to the herb shop for the first time. I went there with my now fiance and we walked in the door and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never been anywhere like this. And I don't know much about it, but I want to know more. And going back and actually talking to Colleen, and she was the one that told me that you guys offered internships, and it was just like right away. I didn't even like, it was like, where do I sign? I'll just do it right now. I'd love to just do that. And going to the first meeting and just jumping in head first, and you were just a big catalyst for that. So I've always just, I keep you in my heart in that way because you were such a guiding light, really. And I just really want you to know that I honor you and honor that space. And it's really exciting to see that you're still the owner of the herb shop and seeing it from its beginnings to now and all the changes that have come through. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about that and see what's happening and what that transition felt like for you. But before we get there, can we talk about the first herb that you remember that was like a gateway for you?
Oh man, like this question's always so hard. I guess if I really, really have to like look at it, I was at a point in my life that was really transitional and I was trying to decide what my next steps were for in life. And so I found this herb shop in New Mexico where I was at the time. I was taking about a 3-month sabbatical and having a lot of anxiety because I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. I'd graduated college and worked in the design industry and just wasn't super happy with the type of work that I was doing. And the lady there gave me some passion flower, and that, I mean, instantly like became a huge catalyst. And so there's that. And then I also feel like I have to give credit to cannabis because I feel like cannabis is so much, I call it the gateway drug to herbalism, because so many people, they find it and they're like, wow, this is a really strong plant. It does so many amazing things. What else is out there, And so I really have to give credit also to that at that point in time. I was taking a break from all of that. And the very, very first time that I consumed cannabis after a long, long break, I got this amazing vision of doing a wellness property and, herbal medicine and all these things that I'm like, I have no idea what any of these things are or like how to even get from being a designer to an herbalist, So I feel like it was kind of both of those two playing together at that particular point in my life that were, huge catalyst to bring me into the herbal medicine and into my passion and into what I feel like is really, important. And then also calm my nervous system down at the same time, which I really, really, really needed at that point in time. We all have those pivotal moments in life, and that was definitely kind of the end of my Saturn return and, next phase of life. Everyone has their cycles in life, and I definitely have a 12-year cycle, which is, another conversation, but it's definitely important to acknowledge your own personal cycles. Like that 12-year cycle brought me into herbalism. I just had my 12-year cycle again that, made this big shift from being a corporation to a nonprofit, really. And, so it's an important thing to note that, notice your cycles and notice where you are and notice the things that happen to you within those time periods. It's a nice little planning tool for the future.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how a lot of times things in life that we're meant to be doing come to us during like an epiphany moment or something like that. But to hear that with you, that there was this huge download and you didn't even know anything about herbalism basically. That's
Yeah,
so cool. And in hindsight, it makes so much sense too, because the plants were calling you. And that's one of the things that they do, as you know
absolutely.
very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, when I look back through my whole life, even back to a child, like there's so many poignant moments that plants were really important to me, and spoke to me, from not only from a nutrition standpoint, but also from, a medicine standpoint. And like you're saying, they absolutely do call you. And just like you, like having that, seeing the light bulb in you where you're like, wow, okay, like this is really cool. Like I can see how I can utilize this in so many facets of my life, and that's really what the plants do.
Yeah, they do, and I remember so distinctly being tasked with pouring elderberry syrup at the herb shop one day as an intern, and had
Mm,
never even heard of herbal elderberry syrup. I didn't know what it was or whatever. And you guys always encouraged us as interns to like, if there's something you don't know, like, don't be afraid to like taste a little bit or like smell it or just like hold it or feel it or just feel the energy. And taking a tiny sip of the elderberry syrup and being blown away at how delicious it was and having such a unique flavor. And then there was like nothing else before. And I remember pouring jars or pouring the bottles and like having this memory, like an ancestral memory that I had
mm.
done something like this before. And then it wasn't long after that you then were going to open the new shop and everything else. And so it was just like this whole shifting thing. And I feel like perhaps I'm part of your 12-year cycle or something. Maybe
Yep,
there's some kinship there because having us
yep.
come back together and just even having this conversation after not speaking for a while, it feels really good. And it's really cool just to see what's happening. So um, it sounds to me like, herbs have been a part of the way that your life has changed in a big way. Like they've helped you to change your life and in positive ways. And so, how are some of the ways, like even on an emotional and spiritual level, that you've seen herbs help you shift? And how have they done that for you in certain times in your life, not just pertaining to opening an herb shop or what have you?
Absolutely. I mean, as soon as I got into herbal medicine, it just became my life, and like you're saying, it was like this download of knowledge and information from whether it's past lives or like ancestral, knowledge that's been passed down. It felt like it was something that had always been a part of my life for centuries and lifetimes. Um, and, I think that once I got that, everything changed, like my food habits changed, my like what I put in my body changed, respecting everything, respecting the plants growing in your yard or your neighbor's yard. And then also just, as far as like day to day, I'm not somebody that necessarily always takes an herb every single day. I think it is like really following your intuition with like, hey, I need this right now. And it's amazing right now, but it's not something that's ongoing. I feel like one thing that was really awesome, with starting a new business, there's always so much organization, and just running a business in general. There's just so much information and so much organization and so much like categorization of making things happen. So really working with brain and memory herbs, like that was amazing because there's just certain things that my brain does not want to focus on, especially in the computer, whether it's like a mathematical formula or whatever it is. And I'm like really seeing how potent, like our brain food blends are, or just in general, taking like bacopa or ginkgo or gotu or rosemary, like they're all such great brain, stimulating, focusing herbs, that was a huge thing for me. And such a simple thing, like such a simple catalyst. As far as like energetically, oh man, I could just like go on and on and on about different like energetic plants. And I will say that I was somebody that was definitely on the fence about things like flower essence when I first got into herbal medicine, and having
Oh,
learned,
interesting. Yeah.
like learning their ways and learning to trust them was way harder than like the medicinal or like food aspect of plants and plant-based medicine. Where flower essence, you're kind of like, what is this? I don't understand, and you hear stories where, maybe somebody somebody's dog gets hurt and they give them some flower essence, and all of a sudden they're like, you see their whole body just relax, or a child, And so like seeing it in person and then starting to experience it in person as a very, very beautiful thing. And one of my most favorite to this day flower essence to work it with is yellow mustard flower. Actually, it's such a huge catalyst to drive you into like your future. I feel like it really energizes like you and where you are and helps you focus on going through the right doors in life, I guess is like the best way to put it. But that's probably like long term, like that is a flower essence that I've used on and off for many, many years. And definitely recommend working with the subtle medicine of flower essence, and they're so simple to make. I mean, they're so simple as far as, utilizing plant material or other, materials to make something. It's a really beautiful thing to actually, be a part of. So, but that's just a couple, obviously, like depending on what you need. I mean, the first time you get sick and have a head cold and you use herbs and they work and you're just like, what? Like, this is amazing, Like, I feel like the first few years getting into plant medicine in general, like every time you use something and it works, you're just like, like mind blown.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the flower essence, that's a good avenue to talk about too, because it is so accessible. I mean, yes, you need like a preservative like alcohol or even like apple cider vinegar, but most everyone can get the ingredients you need for a flower essence. And most everyone can get the ingredients you need for a simple tincture as well, but the flower essences in general too. I think because of their gentle nature too, and you're utilizing water, which can be structured in and of itself. So you're like structuring the water to the flower essence and then the intention and all that. But with children, being able to make that a flower essence is like super, super cool, because you're like sitting in the sun and you're able to show them and just put it in the water. All you need is water and flowers. And it's like this very simple lesson in how things can be transferred and how our energy is transferred and how the plants transfer their energy to us and vice versa. And I think for me, that's been one of the like most rewarding things about herbalism is seeing the different types of ways you can connect with a plant and the different types of medicines that come at different times in your life, like simply sitting next to a plant versus harvesting it or doing anything to it, and how medicinal that can be as well for people, and how that might be exactly what you need at that time in your life. And then sometimes you need something a little more potent. And so
Yeah.
seeing all of that, and I imagine you have experiences like that too, or just like we were talking about in the beginning, seeing someone walk through the doors and like look at a jar and being like, oh my God, there's herbs in there. And that being the medicine.
Yeah. Or just like, I mean, on that note, I mean, and I know you can relate to this too, but like, especially when we first opened up, we'd open the big garage door and you would just see people way out on the sidewalk, like not even right in front of us, that would stop and smell the air and follow their nose into the shop. And, just like, and they're just like, what is all of this? Like such a
Yes.
cool catalyst to like bring people in through our senses. So yeah. But with flower essence and energetics, like you're saying, like there's such potent medicine, and really special to show somebody how you can energetically, bring things like the sun or the moon into what you're distilling, or whatever other astrological or energetic properties you might want to incorporate into a flower essence, or really any tincture or anything you're making, but it's a really beautiful process.
Yeah, very cool. And I want to start kind of transitioning into the shop itself, because there was probably a moment, I don't know if you had another epiphany or what it was, or it was a conversation maybe with JJ, but what was the moment when you thought to yourself, I want to start a second location of this shop? And what did that look like? And what did that feel like for you? And how did you deal with the anxiety or maybe the intimidation that comes along with taking on an endeavor like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the second I walked into the store, like the first day I was there, it was like I was home, you know what I mean? And you don't often feel like that at a job. You don't often feel like I'm walking into some place and just in this world of like amazement, really, and it was pretty quickly. I mean, with my background in design and like taking that sabbatical, like I knew I wanted to open a business that revolved around, the healing arts and wellness and all of those things. I did not know that the herb shop was going to be the place that I owned eventually. When I stepped in there, I literally was like, I need to know all this information because I know nothing. I mean, like you're saying, I walked in day one, I walked in and I had heard of echinacea, St. John's, and valerian, and that was about it. So it was just so much information to learn at first, but it felt so good. And like kind of what we were talking about before, it was just like this download of information that was already there. I mean, obviously, like learning Latin names and learning the body systems and all that kind of stuff was all new to me, but it felt like it was received really quickly and easily, as if it had already been there. So I very quickly was like, okay, like I see the potential of this company. I see, what it wants to bring and what it is to the community. And I wanted to be a part of it. So I think it was probably as soon as I got to the shop, JJ had left to go open the Brooklyn store that she had. And so I kind of got there and was blindfolded, like, as far as that goes, like I had no idea. And like, obviously everybody that's ever worked and been part of the herb shop has a special place there. But I was like interning and working at the same time and trying to figure out how to say Latin names, basically, and all these things. And so I had a really strong crew with people like Colleen and Caitlin, and Zan and Ursula. Like there was such a strong crew when I got there that they just took me under their wings. And what I do best is like see systems and organization. So I start, organizing things to make it simpler and easier. And like, let's not work hard. It's already hard enough that we're having to help troubleshoot people's, life things, and wellness problems or issues or concerns. So, let me help make the rest of the things organized, So I feel like within the first year of being there, JJ and I started talking about, partnering and what that might look like. And I was in, I was like 100% in. I knew it was exactly where I needed to be and had been brought there. I mean, in fact, when I was going through the process of like, I want to learn herbal medicine and wellness practices, and I'm looking at all these cities that cater to it. And of course, Portland came up and felt right. And I found the herb shop online and on their website. And it was like a direct message of like, go there. And I'm like, okay, like this is crazy, but okay, whatever, So I like literally flew out here, hung out with a good friend that I grew up with in New Mexico, and interviewed with JJ. And I really wasn't even intending it to be an interview. It was just like, I just want to ask you questions on how you got from A to B to C, And before I had left that week, she called me and offered me a job in August. And that was in April of 2011. And so I moved out here in August of 2011, and started at the herb shop 3 days later, and
Wow.
so it was just like so synchronistic. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and JJ was good for navigating some of the basic essentials of things. And, we worked together, pretty well with like organizing how to launch the next system, how to launch the next business, how to launch the next brick and mortar, like how to grow from, this tiny little shop that, you remember what the kitchen looked like there, you know what I mean? And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's just like, how do we go from mom and pop to like something that we can sell products all over because we have licensing and all of those type of things. And there was a lot of research and a lot of work within that capacity to try to make sure we were in alignment with the city and the state and federal and all those type of things. And it's, that's an ongoing process, right? Like it's always evolving and always changing. But that was the main goal, was that we actually had like a really nice production kitchen space, and even more than retail, at first was like, how do we have like the right type of licensing and kitchen space to do what we want to do and to grow in the capacity that we wanted to grow in. So it was pretty quickly, we signed the lease on Mississippi in 2013 in October. And then I got to act as the general contractor to like design the space and build out the space and learn about city permits and all those things that you have to do when you're like building something out, which was, I mean, I was happy to have that background to some degree, but it from like October 2013 till February 2014, when we opened, it felt like it was 6 years. You know what I mean? Because everything's new, everything's brand new. Like not only am I having to like do the design work and and figure out materials, but also hiring out the contractors and working with owners in the city and all those things. And so once we opened our doors, of course, then it was a whole new ball game. Like it's way different to, from my background in design. Usually I'm used to being able to like kind of pass things over once that aspect of design work is done. And now I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is a whole new thing. Now I'm running a business. You know what I mean? So, it was really beautiful to like open the doors and see people come in and, once again, provide that safe space for people in a new neighborhood that, they may or may not have had that experience with herbal medicine or even that knowledge of that. And back then, Mississippi Avenue was like still kind of a new upcoming like street as far as like foot traffic and day traffic. Like there'd been, nightlife and all kinds of stuff there for years. But whenever we opened that location, it was still pretty new. So like over 10 years of being there and seeing that foot traffic really change and evolve was a really cool thing. And then in 2016, Jade decided she wanted to step away from doing this. So like I just continued with the Herb Shoppe and, worked on as a team. Like something that I felt was really important was bringing all of us together to help create formulas. So again, it's more of a community concept of, what our formulas are and why they're there. It's important to note that that's not just me that created those formulas. It's a group effort from every person that's ever been part of our production team or had an idea or a thought, and again, I think that's community medicine, right? Like it's like, it's not just one system of things or one brain that's working. It's a group effort, which ultimately I think is kind of a big reason why we're a nonprofit now. Like when I look back, I'm like, we've kind of operated as a nonprofit. We do tons of donations like all over the city. Like if somebody comes to me and is like, I can't afford this and I need this, like I'm going to find a way to get them that medicine, or that consults or whatever it is. So I think that the evolution of like where we are now and looking back at the past, obviously, I feel like the Herb Shoppe, and I even remember having a conversation about doing a nonprofit when we first opened Mississippi, versus doing an LLC or an S Corp. But I feel like it's been begging me to be a nonprofit since I became part of this company. And so now it is. And now we're ready to evolve.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode of The Healing Home. I currently have some new full moon offerings for everyone. My Radiant Glow cleansing grains, fresh yarrow tincture, and a mugwort flower essence. You can learn more about these and purchase them for yourself over at michelleshealinghome.com. Now, back to the show. Oh, I love hearing that story. That's beautiful. And it's cool because I have context for these places and things, where it is, what it looks like. So for people out there that have never seen, Portland or the Mississippi Street area or anything, Amanda is correct in the sense that there was not much going on as foot traffic, and that area has just totally exploded. And I haven't even been over there in a few years, so I can't even say what it looks like exactly at this moment. But in my mind's eye, having been there when it really took off, the Herb Shoppe brought something to that area that was so new and unique that I think people were just like awe-inspired by it. And that's one of the things that I can remember about it. And so I imagine that that's happening now that you've transitioned it. So to be clear for people, you've now closed the retail doors, the retail side of it. So you've shifted to online sales. And then now it's literally just the community clinic. And then people can, I'm assuming, purchase remedies and things after consults and things like that. But that's basically your focus now. So I really want to talk about this because I'm interested even in the transition and what that felt like for you and how that came about and what it is, what's the process of somebody who would want to come and have a consultation with you guys over at the community clinic.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as how this happened, um, last year I was in North Carolina doing some consulting work as a designer out there for 6 months. And I knew that it was time for a shift. I was in my 12-year cycle. Like, I'm like, okay, the universe is like, hey, like, it's time to make some changes, and I know that herbal medicine is like my passion and it's always going to be like embedded in me, but I was having some big thoughts like, oh, like, am I supposed to like shift in a different way completely? Am I supposed to like do something different with herbal medicine? I'm having all these like, big thoughts like, what's happening and how is this happening? And I made the decision, obviously after getting through COVID and all of that kind of stuff. I was kind of like, oh, okay, like where we were before COVID and where we are now after COVID with the cost of everything is kind of insane. Even though we're doing better financially each month and all those things, but in order for us to raise our prices enough to match where we needed to be, it just did not make sense, And so I knew some big changes needed to happen. So I went to North Carolina. It's so funny because it's like literally 12 years ago. I went to New Mexico for 3 months to have like a sabbatical. And here I am again, like going back to North Carolina, which is also like my roots of college and friends and that kind of stuff, and I knew I was there to work on this project with my friend. But also in the back of my mind, like processing, what am I doing? Where am I going? What are the next steps? And it was so interesting. I'll just bring this up because it's kind of funny. But I got there at the end of January, and in early February, I found this amazing crystal ball. Like, in fact, you can probably see it hanging out back here. But
Ooh,
I found
nice.
this. Yeah, I found this crystal ball in February, and I was like, oh, I really want that, but I'm staying in a tiny studio apartment. I have no space for it. It's $400. Like, I can't spend money on a crystal ball. Like, what am I doing? So I like walked away from it, but I thought about it a lot. And then Colleen came to visit in March, and I'm like, Colleen, I just can't, like, everything's fuzzy. Like, none of the thoughts are coming together in my brain, and I can't figure out like what's happening or why I can't like seem to see clarity on things. And she's like, and I'm telling her about the crystal ball, and she's like, well, it sounds like you just need that crystal ball so you can have some clarity, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, ha, whatever. So like a few months go by, and then it's June, and I'm getting ready to come back here just to teach for summer solstice, and then I have to go back there to finish this project. And my mom comes to visit, and I take some products to the shop that has the crystal ball. And I'm like, Mom, look at this crystal ball. And she's like, do you want this for your birthday? And I'm like, yeah, I do want this for my birthday. And so the crystal ball comes home with us that day. And I'm not kidding. It's like the amount of clarity that has like rushed into my brain. Like, I flew back out here the next week. I taught at the summer solstice event. And then it was like the whole time I was here, I got stuck here because there was some airline debacle that was going on. So I got stuck here for another 5 days. And it was like, I say stuck here, but I was back home, but I was supposed to be in North Carolina. And it was just the amount of information and downloads that came to me. Like, I knew that I needed to come back here and close the shop and make this transition, into doing the nonprofit and like really serving the community in the way that I feel like the Herb Shop wants to do. And so it was so funny that, I feel like this crystal ball like has kind of become this catalyst of like this transition. And the whole time I was in North Carolina, it's like being in Mercury retrograde where there's all these thoughts bouncing around, but like nothing's coming into your body or into your brain yet, and then
Yeah.
the second you get out of that, all of a sudden it's like, this funnel of information that is very valid, and that it's stuff that's been kind of floating around out there, and now it's coming together to make sense. So I came back from North Carolina, and I closed the shop, and made the transition to move everything all online, and then also to really focus on the clinics. And so, like, we've been doing the nonprofit's been around actually for a couple years. We've been doing the 30-minute sliding scale consultations, and so that way people can afford that. And with that being said, again, if somebody comes to me and is like, I absolutely can't afford something, that's why this is here. So people can pay a little bit extra, and that helps to cover those folks that can't afford it, or maybe they can only afford a small amount of that. Right now they're all virtual, but I am working with a couple local nonprofits to set up some free community clinics here in Portland. And so we'll be able to serve the houseless. So we'll be able to serve folks that need simple information. I mean, we'll probably start with some really basic things like foot soaks or facial steams, and then slowly move into like food as medicine, or maybe even product making, depending on, who our audience might be at that time. We want to make things, teach people things that they can take with them, even if they're houseless, and so it's going to be a process and an evolution. I'm actually going tonight for the first time to volunteer at one of the nonprofits to like see their flow and see what we can do. But the goal is to work with this one particular nonprofit. I don't want to say their name just yet until it's like concrete, but hopefully once a month we'll be doing that. So again, like these donations that are coming in for the nonprofit help us to be able to do that and to expand into the community. And I'd like to also move into events or like herbal first aid for natural disaster or things like that. So this is all kind of an evolution in the beginning standpoint of all of this. And then my ultimate goal is to eventually have us have a wellness property where people can come stay short-term, long-term. We'll still have clinics and clinic space and things like that, but really like bring that farm to table, like food as medicine, and come do some yoga, come meditate, or come and do, some acupuncture or massage or whatever it might be. So lots of big things on the horizon, but I feel like the nonprofit and the shift into, all online and, focusing on these community clinics is really the direction that we want to head. And so, but it's specific for women. They have a store that folks can come get whatever they want. They usually do some sort of activity, which is where we will kind of step in the future. And then they provide food and clothing and all kinds of stuff for this one. Like I said, is very specific for the female bodied, folks. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. But, the goal is to hopefully do it once a month with this nonprofit. And, we'll start really small with things like foot soaks or facial steams, and then, hopefully evolve that into more like medicinal things. But, I think a big part of it is just education. And let's talk about, food as medicine and like how your body might react to certain things. But also creating these activities that they can take and, do wherever they are in whatever situation. So whether that's food, or again, maybe that's just giving yourself a facial steam, or a foot soak, or, learning some breathing exercises that help with anxiety and stress, or whatever it is, like the sky's the limit for what we can and, are able to do within education. But yeah, so the nonprofit, that's a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of what, the donations go to are going to be able to help provide those clinics. And then I hope to also kind of branch out into more to have like wellness spaces at events, or even like herbal first aid at natural disaster type situations. I think that so much of what we can do and have the capacity to do now that we're a nonprofit and being able to really help the community, the sky's the limit with that now. And so that's really exciting. And those 30-minute consultations or the donations that folks do on the website, like all of that goes to help the clinics and then folks that can't afford to do those things. So buying their products online, like those part of that goes into the percentage of helping the community clinics, and same thing with all the other things. So, but yeah, I think that this is kind of the beginning, and it's launching a new chapter of the Herb Shop and how we can support the community and people that might need the most assistance, as well as every person that wants to know about wellness and food as medicine and how their body specifically works, like not a band-aid. Like, let's look at the root cause. Let's see, oh, maybe dandelion root doesn't work for you, but Oregon grape does. Or maybe you can have gluten and other people can't, or whatever it is. And so there's so much of a process of like understanding that person and their body to try to find the right herbs and food that works for them specifically.
Yeah, and I love that we're talking about that, the differences between people, because that's one of the biggest things to recognize with this. And when you're working with different types of people in different situations, how important it is to keep those things in mind. And so I find that with herbs too and food, remembering that yes, not everything is going to be the same for everybody else, and keeping in mind that thing you said that's really important, the root. Let's talk about the root, the root of what's going on. And I think too, for me, that's been a key for herbalism, and how it's opened me up is to understanding that there is like an underlying emotional situation that is probably creating whatever that physical ailment or the illness that's popping up. So for me, I'm actually really excited to learn more from you when you start to go into the houseless community, because I mean, we all know that we all have trauma. Obviously, everybody has gone through things, but I would be very curious to understand and learn more about what you encounter with that, and how many of the people you guys might be able to allow them to see that there could be something that could help them herbally with some of the traumas that they maybe haven't dealt with or have a hard time dealing with, or aren't even aware that that could be causing something. So in that sense, do you have a projection or a trajectory on that area working with these people, or is it more of just kind of like starting here and seeing where it goes?
I think flower essence are going to be amazing in that capacity.
Ah,
Like when we're
yeah.
talking about like, energetics, I feel like that is going to be really spectacular to work with folks. Again, like that's something that's pretty easy to make and something that they can carry on them at any point in time. So I definitely think working with the energetic body, and like you're talking also, or you were just mentioning, the emotion that is related to so much of our illnesses and things like that, and I mainly work within like the Western herbalism model more so than Chinese medicine, but I love, love, love what Chinese medicine does with, each particular emotion and how it's related to a particular organ, and, like lungs and grief, right? Like, oh, all of a sudden I'm having asthma, or I'm having, chest issues, chest congestion, but then at the same time, their mother died, or something, and you're like, oh, the grief and the lungs they're together, they're working together, so again, getting to that root cause of like trying to treat, or not necessarily treat, but trying to help assist in what's going on in the body is really important. And with that being said, I think that is a good like game plan to kind of start with folks with these nonprofits. But as all things are in life, it's good to have a plan, but like to have the flexibility to see like where the road is going to take you with that, right? As a business owner, and I know this too, like we all have plans, so we all have grand plans. You're not just like shooting out into the wind most of the time, but it is that flexibility of like, oh, okay, wow, that door did not work, but check this one out that just opened up over here, like that feels right. Like so much of being a business owner is just trusting that intuition and letting it navigate you. as you're researching and growing and evolving, right? So the nonprofit is the same within that aspect of like, here's the core foundation for what we want to do, right? We want to serve the community. We want to bring wellness and plant-based medicine to the community and education on, food and wellness and all those things. But, let's see where the road takes us to.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And it's so right. I know there's a phrase that says like you plan, God laughs. And I remind myself of that because life is like that. And doing this podcast has been a really big lesson in that because there's all sorts of things that happen. And, even just having questions, sending them to someone maybe or not sending them, and then you have questions that you wanted to ask but the conversation went in a totally different direction and it actually went better than you thought it was because you didn't follow the questions, so there's that playfulness that I love about life in general, but I think the plants like the playfulness too, and I think that that's part of the magic that happens with herbalism in general. And speaking of just herbalism, as I said it just in general, but have you noticed, or what are some of the shifts in the attitude towards herbalism that you've noticed over the years of being a business owner, but then also just being interested and studying herbalism?
Yeah. Oh man, like so much. I mean, I could go back to like the beginning of when I was like, I'm gonna go be an herbalist. And everyone I knew was like, what the heck is a herbalist and what are you doing? I mean, literally they're like, oh, what is this like dirty hippie, medicine? Like you know what I mean? Like the mindset back then was so not necessarily negative towards herbal medicine, but it was like, what is this? And does this really work? And like, why would you waste your time and energy and effort type of thing? Like, that was a lot of what I felt whenever I first made this decision. But then, like over the years and see people that have known me, my whole life, family, friends, things like that, like they instantly saw, oh wow, like the things that changed in me, as well as, being able to help them with things. Now people that were so against it at the beginning come to me all the time and they're like, what do you know about this? What do you know about that? And, I think that that's really beautiful, an evolution of that. But then there's also, COVID. Like, I mean, I think we've been on the
Yeah.
upwards swing for a long, long time for sustainability and, and wanting to know what's in products and what's going on our body and what's going in our food and what I'm putting on my animals or my children or, all of that kind of stuff has had an upward swing for a while. Like I would say that that's been an evolution probably for at least the last 15 to 20 years. Like there's been a change of mindset with a lot of folks. And that was kind of part of my, mindset change too, was like thinking about like my grandmother who made everything from scratch, everything. Like she never picked up a box of brownies a day in her life, like everything was made from scratch. And that was kind of a moment for me where I was like, how do you make things? Like I like to make things. I mean, and so I think that that's, one aspect of the evolution. But COVID was a huge catalyst. I think that watching people, during this very pivotal moment in time where all of our lives changed in some capacity or another. As a business owner going through that, having a brick and mortar going through that, and then just seeing the mass amount of people that are wanting to know what that is in that medicine, wanting to know, what might be in that vaccine, wanting to know like how to stay well during COVID, or if they get COVID, what can help with that. So there was definitely an uprise of folks wanting wellness and wanting herbal medicine during COVID and after. So in a really beautiful way, that was a catalyst, I think, for the wellness industry, and the awareness, bringing more awareness to like the larger masses of people, and it's COVID was a scary time, but it was also very weird. And, none of us really knew what was up or down for a hot second. So I think that, bringing herbal medicine and that goes obviously again into the energetics of like all the feelings that we were all feeling and like not even knowing what feelings we were feeling from minute to minute for a hot second. Um, flower essence were great for that. Everything in the nervous system or the nervine family, like passion flower, lemon balm, skullcap, all of those, chamomile, even lavender, rose, like they were such great herbs to have by your side during that, and then of course there like are the wellness herbs and things like that too. But I think that um watching from my 13 years in herbalism, I can only imagine being someone like Rosemary Gladstar that's been watching this for as long as it's been a huge thing in the States, right? Like rosemary was a catalyst for bringing herbal medicine to the forefront and to the public. And I feel like I'm still so much a baby in this industry and in this lifetime. But as herbal medicine is a life journey, and we're still continually always learning and evolving. And bringing it to the public in a way that makes sense and is digestible, I think is really important and continues to open those doors for people, to know plant medicine and understand plant medicine versus it just being some weird side thing over here. So
Yeah, I 100% agree with pretty much everything you're saying in terms of watching the shift from people being super skeptical or looking at herbalism as like quackery to now people are much more open. As you said, there's people that I never would have expected asking me questions or asking other people who know about herbalism or natural care for even your pets or yourself or whatever, that I'm like, oh, you're interested in it now. That's awesome. And it actually doesn't matter that you weren't interested or didn't care before. That's, I think, the thing to keep in mind, because when we get into this mindset of, oh, well, you poo-pooed me last year, so I'm not gonna, do you really want to know or whatever? It's kind of, then it becomes this weird like dynamic with people, and that's going to shut people off even more. And so it's, again, kind of continuing to stay present and not getting stuck in the past or the future so much, because when you do that, then you do lose that special spark of a moment where that person asked you the question. So
yeah.
it's like to kind of like take away the judgment of whether or not they cared, last year or not. It doesn't matter. It's that they care now. And I think that moving forward is just like a good place to be in for all things of life. But I think in general, more people seem to be kind of trying to be more in that mindset. At least the people that I'm trying to surround myself with are more in that mindset of like, let's just like be here now. It's so much more healthy. And you realize too that you realize what you really need and what you might not need when you're staying more present. And it's just been a really good lesson for me. And I think that you can put herbalism, you can practice herbalism in that way. And I think it's really healthy from that standpoint.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's good to remember that everybody's journey is different, like we all
Mm.
arrive at different times, to sometimes the same conclusions. And I found a lot of times folks that are like maybe a little bit unsure about herbal medicine will go towards like natural skincare or will go towards and when they're like, wow, like, okay, that works really well for me. Again, it's kind of a catalyst, especially when they're seeing it in an animal, for example, that can't talk to you or communicate, but you can clearly see that that animal feels better. Right. Because so much of plant-based medicine, I think people get stuck in their heads, like, is this really working or is this just my brain? And I mean, obviously there's some herbs that are way more like immediate and you're like, okay, wow, I feel that. But then there are a lot of herbs that are super gentle and super nourishing, to the body that maybe you don't have the immediate effect with that. So, just again, like meeting people where they are and letting them come to you is the best thing that any of us can do as herbalists, because we're all on a different journey.
Indeed. And that's the beauty of life. I mean, because that's just how it goes. And it feel like it just has to be that way for this place to actually operate, you know? And it's okay. And those are the types of things that we have to accept in our lives. And I think once we start to accept these things, that's our own evolution. And that's just what it's all about, in my opinion, to actually be here and be in this moment, or be a creature here in this realm that we call Earth. So it's pretty awesome. And I want to start wrapping up here because we're almost at the top of the hour. And before we start to wrap up, what I want to ask you is about home apothecary, like building a home apothecary, because we're talking about community herbalism, we're talking about empowerment, we're talking about all these things that can help somebody to understand how they can help themselves. And I think having a home apothecary is one of the best things you can do, even if it's the smallest, little corner in your house to start. So, because I want to get to some of your tips that you have for people out there that maybe have never started an apothecary and they want to, what would be some of your top pieces of advice for them to just get started?
Yeah. Look at your spice cabinet, see what's already in your spice cabinet, because so many spices are medicinal within their own right. Like if you've got digestion issues, I bet you probably have some ginger, or maybe even some fennel seed, or, maybe you've got a toothache. I bet you have some clove in there, like there's so many things that you probably already have in your spice cabinet. So just getting a good general list of what you have, and maybe even starting to research those first. And then, of course, obviously, like growing things in your garden, even things that like dandelion or chickweed, like harvest them from your yard as they come in. And the last thing that I will say is save your jars. Like every herbalist will like laugh at that, because we all have a ridiculous amount of jars that we save. But there's so many things that we use on the regular that we buy at the grocery store or whatever that come in a glass jar. So start saving those glass jars, so that way you have them when you've got a big batch of dandelions, or a big batch of rose petals, or whatever it is that's growing in your yard that you might want to save. Start with the basics. It's really hard to like not want to buy every single herb once you get the herbal medicine bug. And I get that. And I did that, but just remember, like a small amount goes a really long way. I think that's also a mistake that getting into herbal medicine that we've all done, is like, oh, I'm going to go harvest X, Y, and Z. And then you come back with this much and you're like, what am I going to deal with all this? So just remembering, if you're harvesting, make sure it's a plentiful location, that you're only taking what you need, that you're giving back to where you're taking from, as in like an offering of, tobacco or another plant or whatever it might be. But then also like what is already growing there. And if you are going to go to an apothecary and buy an herb of something to keep in your house or your kitchen or your apothecary, make sure you're buying just what you need, and again, that's really hard. A lot of times we'll get people that order like 2 ounces of mullein, and you're like, oh my gosh, do you know that 2 ounces of mullein is like this much mullein, or you probably could get a half ounce or quarter ounce, and again, those are things that you learn over time. You're gonna make those mistakes at first. But the best thing I can tell you from my own personal experiences is start smaller than what you think, because like whatever you think, you probably need less. So, same thing, like if you're making a fresh tincture, like if you're taking, fresh plant material and have a 32-ounce jar, that's going to last an individual person a really long time when you make a tincture with that. So again, like don't over harvest more than what you might need for just your own personal needs. And Yeah, I guess again, kind of back to that same like note, like you probably need a lot less plant material than what you actually think you need. So start with a quarter ounce or a half ounce of something versus an ounce or 2 ounces of something, because try it and see if you like it before you expand and have, a 32 ounce or a half gallon jars full of Mullen or whatever it is. So yeah, that's those are kind of my tips for like your apothecary. Start small, start with what you already have, see what's growing in your yard first before you're like going anywhere else or in your neighborhood or your field or wherever you might live. See what's there first.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the starting smaller is the best piece of advice, I would say. And it does
Mhm.
make you, it reminds you too how little you actually need. And sometimes people might think, they might base their idea of an apothecary on going to an herb shop, and then in their mind, they think, "Well, I should have a huge variety, right?" But you actually can have, like, a very small cabinet, just a half of your cabinet in a kitchen that can just become that where you store everything, and I think that's one of the most fun ways to do it too, is realizing the amount that you can start with and what can get you pretty far, and that's really cool, so I think that's really great advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also, you have a little bit of that plant material that maybe you make it into a tea, but maybe make it into a tincture, or maybe you infuse it into an oil. So, like, you again are like taking that particular plant, the small amount of that plant and turning it into something that's even a lot more, as far as tincture or oil might go. And so that is, again, it doesn't take that much plant material to make a large quantity of something. So start small, keep everything in jars, keep it out of the sunlight. Those are all kind of basic informations for your home apothecary.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that. And,
Mhm.
before I let you go, I want everybody to know where they can find you. And, if you have any closing thoughts that you wanna share with the audience, feel free and do that, but all your links will be down below to the herb shop, to your website, and all of that stuff. But, feel free and, take some time to shout anything out and, let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely on the website, which is the Herb Shop, and that's SHOPPE That has everything you could ever imagine. And I'm really, really excited to let folks know that we are finally, after 10 years, able to have custom blends on our website. So you can go to like custom tinctures. That's the first one that's launching, and you can actually create your own tincture in there, which is super pumped and super excited about. And then we'll start with flower essence and several other things as we go through. But that's a really great thing. And then also follow us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And our handle is the Herb Shop PDX there as well. And again, shop is spelled SHOPPE. You can also join our newsletter, which you can do directly from the website. And that has our monthly blogs and recipes and all kinds of information out there for folks to, research and study things from, past conversations that we've had. But, definitely like reach out. You can donate to the nonprofit, which is a huge part of what we're doing here. And if you also have clinics or nonprofits in the Portland area that you would like for us to come and do community clinics, I would love to connect with you. Or if you want to do virtual consultations, we can do that all over the world. So we're excited to have this nonprofit and to start on this new journey. And new journey of wellness, really, and being able to educate. So thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm really excited to be here and talking with you today.
Oh, yes. You're so welcome. And yeah, and I encourage people to check you guys out. And I am just so happy for you for all the progress and the change. And I can feel it on you, even through the internets, that you are really excited for all of this new stuff. And I'm proud of you. It's really cool to see. So I wish you guys all the best on moving forward and opening these new doors. It's really cool. And we need more things like this because not only is it going to educate people, but it's going to help them heal. And that is like one of the biggest things we all need. So kudos to you, and wish you all the best. And we'll talk again real soon. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. It was good to see you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of The Healing Home. For all things Healing Home, you can head to michelleshealinghome.com. Thank you to all the patrons out there for all your continued support. Really appreciate what you guys are providing for us over here at The Healing Home. Patreon.com/The Healing Home for anyone who'd like to join me over on Patreon. A handbook for herbal and natural cat care is available on my website to download for $11. And go and get yourself this introductory guide for you and your cat so you can start to bring herbs and natural remedies into their life. You can sign up for my newsletter over at Michelle's Healing Home underneath the newsletter tab. There you'll be able to see old issues as well if you're looking to see what I have been putting out for the past 3 years through the Full Moon Offering newsletter. And the current full moon offering is number 46, my Radiant Solstice Remedies. I have a fresh yarrow tincture for you all, Radiant Glow cleansing grains, and a mugwort flower essence, all of which are very special and near and dear to me. And if you'd like to learn more about them, you can head to michelleshealinghome.com and go to my online store. And up on the screen is my current menu, along with all the prices for all the items I have available. You can also feel free and ask me about custom or bulk orders. You can do that at michelleshealinghome.com, or you can email me, michelleshealinghome@gmail.com. Next Full Moon Offering newsletter comes out on 7/21. And next week's show is a TBA. So come and join me next week on the 9th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to see what we're going to roll out here at the Healing Home. And Mario has just released his High Priestess video through Symbolic Secrets over there on Patreon, and also through his membership on his website. So you can go to symbolicstudies.com if you'd like to sign up for the membership. You can also find him over there at patreon.com/symbolic studies. All the tiers of supports begin at $5 and go upwards. And it's going to be a wonderful journey here with Symbolic Secrets. People have really been enjoying it, and Mario has too. And I've been enjoying watching him create what he's putting out there for everybody. And with all that said, folks, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, for all your continued support, and just being here with me. So until next time, take care out there.